In this video series, we'll delve into the biblical timeline of history. We aim to uncover the significance of important historical dates, such as the creation in 11,013 BC, the flood in 4990 BC, and even the date when God would bring judgment upon the house of God, the churches, as mentioned in 1 Peter 4:17. We'll also explore the date of Judgment Day, which is also alluded to in the same verse. And you might be wondering what the biblical timeline of history is and why it's important to learn. These dates weren't placed in the Bible arbitrarily. They serve a purpose beyond mere knowledge. God always has a reason for concealing truths within the Bible. These essential dates are not explicitly stated in verses, but require meticulous exploration through comparing Scripture with Scripture, the biblical method for revealing truth, mathematical analysis, and ultimately guidance from God's Holy Spirit. So what exactly is the biblical timeline of history? It's a timeline that spans across the Bible, beginning with the first book, Genesis. This timeline then extends into subsequent books and chapters. Why should we invest time in learning about the biblical timeline of history? The answer can be found in Ecclesiastes 8:5. Whoso keepeth the commandment shall feel no evil thing, and a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. To comprehend the current time or season, understanding past biblical events is essential to understand when future events will occur that the Bible is prophesied about.
All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Timeline series. I got Brian with me today. Go ahead and spotlight him. Seconds. And we're just gonna, last episode we did like a recap of just the whole timeline. And I'm just gonna show you a few things first. And then Brian will take over from there and finish with the Christmas. And then after that, I think next Sunday is a virtual day in the Word. So the following Sunday, we're going to get more into focusing on Christ's life. So that would be 7 BC, 29 AD, 33 AD, you know, how Mr. Campion came up with these dates. And we're just going to kind of present, you know, what he did to lay it all out. And then, yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay, so am I on?
Yeah, I'm just gonna show them a few things real fast on the timeline. Stuff that drag a window. Okay. All right. So if you're new to the timeline series, if you want to get to the timeline, you go to ebiblefellowship.org. And then, you know, while we're here, I may as well show you that we did change the layout just a little bit, so the icons are a little bit bigger. If you scroll down, you're going to see the timeline on here. It's also right here, but you'll see it on this this bar right here. I'm just going to click it here. And then you can press enter, or you can just scroll down and you'll get to the timeline. And as you recall, last episode, we kind of backtracked and just went through the whole timeline at a rapid pace. And we showed you how we went through the patriarchs, how we discovered Kerasim was the key clue. Then we got to the flood. We went through all the patriarchs after the flood. We revisited the 430 years, going through those patriarchs. We got to Moses, his lifespan, and then to the Exodus. And I pointed out that the Exodus was the key pivotal date to from going to using time paths to project into the future. So in this case, for Solomon's temple, we did the 480-year time path jump from the Exodus until his 4th year. I think I briefly went over the 440. We went through the Kings. For a more in-depth layout, you can click this right here. This lays it all out, but you can't really see how they overlap. So if you want to see more details, you would click this timeline, which we went through. And then last Sunday, we actually went over something we didn't really talk too much about. That was the 70-year tribulation. So we realized that breaks down into a midpoint, which was 587. It began in 609 BC. The midpoint was 587, or the halfway point, the dividing point. And then 539 BC is when it ended, right here. You can ignore these two lines here. I'm doing something with that. And then that took us to Christ, and we laid out Jubilees. We started from 1407. That's when they crossed over into Canaan, the promised land. And that takes you to Christ. Now we're going to go into more details with Christ's lifespan, because there's more information about this that we haven't laid out yet that we'll go over, but we'll do that next Sunday. And then we'll just kind of go through Christ's life, 7 AD, 29 AD, 33 AD. And then from there, we're not really left with much. We got the church age. We got the secular date of 7 AD, when Jerusalem is destroyed by Rome. I'm not sure how Mr. Camping came up with 95 AD, but we'll go through that. And then finally, we're going to jump ahead and talk about all the end time dates that we'll go through that. And that will conclude the timeline. So we're almost there, but it's going to require more work on our end. So with that said, I will hand it over to Brian.
Okay, thank you. I just want to finish up with this nativity scene. I know I've kind of dragged it on, but we'll go to, let me share my screen. You guys can see it, Carl? Carl? Can you guys see the Bible app?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yeah, we can see it. Yep,
Okay.
It's large enough. That's
So we'll start in Matthew 2, verse 1. Now Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. Behold, there came wise men from the east to Jerusalem. And notice, I went over this before, so I'm just going to briefly mention it. If you look in the literal translation, it says he was having been born, and so it's not necessarily immediately after his birth. And also, it says there came wise men, but it doesn't give a number. Verse 2, saying, where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and are come to worship him. And when Herod the king heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And when he had gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he demanded of them where Christ should be born. And they replied to him with Micah 5:2. And again, I'm not going to read that because I did it in the past, but the reference is in Micah 5:2. And we'll read verse 5. And then they said unto him, in Bethlehem of Judea, for thus it is written by the prophet, and thou, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, art not the least among the princes of Judah, for out of thee shall come a governor that shall rule my people Israel. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, and again, the number of wise men is not given, just says that there were wise men. Again, verse 7, Matthew 2:7. Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go search diligently for the young child. And notice this is the word young child. It does not say baby or babe. And when ye have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also. And we did see the word babe, G1025 in Luke. And again, I'm not going to go there. I'm just mentioning it because I've gone over it in the past. In Luke chapter 1, verses 41 and 44. And those were both in reference to a then unborn John the Baptist. And we saw it again in Luke chapter 2, verses 2 and 16. And that's in reference to the Lord Jesus Christ himself as a babe in a manger, and so on and so forth. And that word babe, G1025, does not appear in the Matthew account. And when they had heard the king, they departed, and lo, the star which they saw in the east went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And I want to point out again that the Luke account said nothing about wise men, gifts, or a star. And I also want you to notice that here in the Matthew account, we don't read anything about shepherds or angels. Now, I always imagine a star to be a bright star in the sky, a stationary point. Like before we had the modern electronic devices, sailors would sail. They couldn't use compasses because the ship was wavy, so they would use the North Star. Some people call it Polaris as a way of guiding across the seas. It was a stationary object, very bright, high in the sky. And that's sort of how I always imagined this star to be. But again, if we go back here to verse 9, which they saw in the east and went before them till it came and stood over where the young child was. Now, this implies that the star was moving and not a stationary object, as I had always envisioned. And I want to look very quickly at Revelation 22:16. I, Jesus, have sent mine angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and offspring of David and the bright and morning star. So this star obviously has to represent Christ. And the fact that it moves makes me think of Numbers chapter 9. And I'm going to read verses 16 to 23. Numbers chapter 9, verses 16 to 23. And this is in the context of the 40-year wilderness after the Exodus. So it was always the cloud covered it by, and this is in regards to the tabernacle of the Lord. So it was always the cloud covered it by day, and the appearance of fire by night. And when the cloud was taken up from the tabernacle, then after that the children of Israel journeyed, and in the place where the cloud abode, there the children of Israel pitched in tents. At the commandment of Jehovah, the children of Israel journeyed, and at the commandment of Jehovah, they pitched as long as the cloud abode upon the tabernacle, they rested in their tents. And we can see this moving of the cloud where the fire represents the command of Jehovah. And here we know that this star that also seemed to have moved is picturing the Lord Jesus Christ. Verse 19, Numbers 9:19. And when the cloud tarried long upon the tabernacle many days, then the children of Israel kept the charge of Jehovah and journeyed not. And so it was when the cloud was a few days upon the tabernacle, according to the commandment of Jehovah, they abode in their tents. According to the commandment of Jehovah, they journeyed. And so it was when the cloud abode even from the morning, and that the cloud was taken up in the morning, then they journeyed, whether it was by day or by night, that the cloud was taken up, they journeyed. Whether it were 2 days or a month or a year, I lost my place. Or a year, that the cloud tarried upon the tabernacle, remaining thereon, the children of Israel abode in their tents and journeyed not. But when it was taken up, they journeyed. At the commandment of Jehovah, they rested in the tents, and at the commandment of Jehovah, they journeyed. They kept the charge of Jehovah at the commandment of Jehovah by the hand of Moses. And one other passage I'll read in regards to this is in Exodus 13, verses 21 and 22. Exodus 13, 21 and 22. And Jehovah went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, to go by day and night. He took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night, before the people. And, similarly today, we're in a 40-year period, and wherever God leads us, that's where his people will follow. And let's look at verse 11. We're going to Matthew 2, verse 11. And when they were come into the house, they saw the young child, and again, not a babe. They saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented unto him gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. And again, there were three gifts, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there were three wise men. It could have been there were two wise men and they each brought gold, each brought frankincense, and each brought myrrh. Or it could be that there were three and each of them brought one, or it could be there were 12 and they each brought gold and each brought silver and each brought more. The point is, the text isn't specific. It doesn't tell us. We only know that the gifts were gold, myrrh, and frankincense. We do not know the number of wise men. And also, the word house is G3614, and this is different from the word in. And I should have written this down, but let me see if I can find it very quickly. In Luke 2:7, and she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. And so this word in is G2646, whereas the word house here, the word house is G3624, excuse me, 3614. And so these are two different words. I went over the word in before, and it appears two other times in parallel counts, and it's translated as guest chamber. And they're both in regards to where the Last Supper was. But here, the word house, it appears some interesting places. If you look in Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 to 29, where it talks about the two houses that go through the storm, and one is built on a rock and the other on the sand, that's the same Strong's number. Also in Matthew 12:25, and Jesus knew their thoughts and said unto them, every king divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house, again, G3614, G3614, or house divided against itself shall not stand. We also see it in Matthew 13:57. And they were offended in him, but Jesus said unto them, a prophet is not without honor, save in his own country and in his own house. And again, the same word house. Matthew 5:15, and I'm not going to give too many more examples, but my point is it is a different word, and in and house, are not the same word. Matthew 5:15. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house. And again, same word house. 2 Corinthians 5:1. For we know that if our earthly house, again, same word, of this tabernacle were dissolved, we have a building of God and house, same word, not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. And there are other examples, but you can look this word up if you're interested. But I just wanted to make a point that the word inn and the word house are two separate words. And we'll go back to Matthew 2 and we'll read verse 12. Matthew 2:12. And being warned of God in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed into their own country another way. And again, it just says they, it doesn't give the number of wise men. And when they were departed, behold, the angel of the Lord appeareth to Joseph in a dream, saying, Arise and take the young child. And again, it's not the word babe, it's the word young child. Arise and take the young child and his mother and flee into Egypt, and be thou there until I bring thee word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him. When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed into Egypt, and was there until the death of Herod, that it might be fulfilled, which is spoken of the Lord by the prophet, saying, Out of Egypt I have called my son. Then Herod, when he saw that he was mocked of the wise men, was exceeding wroth, and went forth and slew the children that were in Bethlehem and in all the coasts thereof, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had diligently inquired of the wise men. And so we don't know how long it took Herod to realize that he was tricked. Maybe it was a week, maybe it was a month. I doubt it would take 2 years. But even if he was being overzealous, if he figured that Jesus was about a year old when this happened, he might have killed every child under 2 weeks. But if it took him a week or a month or even 2 months to realize he was tricked, why kill all the children under two? Because even a 2 month old is not going to look like a 2 year old. So this seems to imply that Christ was not an infant at the time that the wise men visited him. And we'll go down to verse 17, Matthew 2:17. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremy the prophet, saying, In Ramah there was a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and a great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted because they are not. But when Herod was dead, behold, an angel of the Lord appeareth in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Arise and take the young child and his mother, and go into the land of Israel, for they are dead which sought the young child's life. And he arose and took the young child and his mother, and came into the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus did reign in Judah in the room of his father Herod, he was afraid to go thither. Notwithstanding, being warned of God in a dream, he turned aside into the parts of Galilee, and came and dwelt in a city called Nazareth, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by the prophets, he shall be called a Nazarene. And this ends chapter 2 of Matthew, and chapter 3 begins with the baptizing of Jesus in AD 29. And I just want to do a quick recap. So on Christmas, the day that Christ was actually born, the angel of the Lord and the heavenly host appeared to the shepherds in the field. And we read that in Luke. And then the heavenly host disappeared, and the shepherds sought a babe. And the word babe does not appear in the Matthew account. The shepherds sought the babe in a manger. And when Jesus was 7/8 days old, Jesus was named and circumcised. And at 40/41 days, Jesus was presented in the temple and seen by Simeon. And most likely after that, Joseph and Mary head for home. Then, at some point after that, An unknown number of wise men followed the star that moved and was not stationary, and the wise men followed the star and worshipped the young child. Again, doesn't say babe. And the wise men, the unknown number of wise men, presented the three gifts and left. And shortly thereafter, Joseph and Mary would have left Egypt. And I found this very interesting. I hope you did as well. But one of the things is sometimes secular people have insights into spiritual things and they don't even realize it. For example, there's a suspicion around the number 13. A lot of buildings don't have a 13th floor, and people seem to be scared of it. Now, of course, they don't understand that 13 represents super fullness and the end of the world, but unsaved mankind on some level is afraid of the number 13, and particularly Friday the 13th. So, for example, Friday is the 6th day of the month, and 6 represents works. And and if you're depending on your own works, in 13 on the day, when judgment has begun, you're in trouble. And when I was a kid, I sang a song, The 12 Days of Christmas. And I asked my mother, why do they say 12 Days of Christmas? Because Christmas is December 25th. And of course, as I just went over, that was not factually correct. But, I wondered, is there any kind of spiritual truth to that? And I did find some interesting things. For example, now Christ was born on Saturday, October 1st, which was the 10th day of the 7th month. And to prove that, in Leviticus 25, 9 and 10. Oops. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound on the 10th day of the 7th month, in the day of atonement. And this is when Christ began his demonstration of how he atoned for the elect from the foundation. Shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land, and ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. And so the Jubilee day is when everyone was set free. And of course, Christ is the essence of the Jubilee, as if the Son shall make ye free, ye shall be free indeed. And if you want to look historically, and I do this so you guys can be a good Berean and verify this. And if I type in October 10th, and this is -6 because this doesn't account for no year 0. I'm sorry, October 1st, rather. October 1st, and so this is Saturday, October 1st of 7 BC, and it is the 10th day of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th month. So that's how I believe camping came up with Saturday, October 1st. And we also know that they were visiting there because of the feast. Let me get rid of that. Because the Feast of Tabernacles. And you can read about that in Leviticus 12, verses 1 to 4. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, no, that's not correct. Okay. Leviticus 23, verses 33 to 36. Leviticus 23, 33 to 36. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, The 15th day of this 7th month shall be the Feast of Tabernacles for 7 days unto Jehovah. On the first day shall be in holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. 7 days shall an offering be made by fire unto Jehovah. On the 8th day shall be in convocation unto you. Ye shall make an offering by fire unto Jehovah. It is a solemn day of assembly. Ye shall do no servile work therein. So the first day, so this is the days of the month. So Christ was born on the 10th day of the 7th month. The Feast of Tabernacles began on the 15th day of the first month. And if you wanted to know the days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, so October 1st, October 2nd, and so on down the line. And so it would have began on the 15th day of the 7th month, which would be the first day of Tabernacles. And that would have been Thursday, October 6th. And again, if you wanted to verify this, if you go to the October 6th, you'll see this is the 15th day of the 7th month. And they offer sacrifice for 7 days. So this is the first day, the second day, the 7 days, and then the 8th day is defined to be a Sabbath. And then on the 9th day, that's when they would have left. So that's what we traditionally call the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles. And again, if you go to the calendar converter, you'll see if you go to October 21st of 2011, you'll see that falls on the 23rd day of the 7th month. And that's right here. So this would be the 9th day of Tabernacles or the 23rd day of the 7th month, which historically would have been October 14th. And again, if you want to verify this, what day did I say that was? October 14th. Friday, October 14th, 23rd day of the 7th month. And so here, this is, remember, we can use accession or non-accession days. And if you look here, this would have been the 12th non-accession day or the 12th calendar day after his birth. This would be the 12th actual day after his birth. And as you can see, it is a Sabbath day, and it's the last day where they offer any sacrifices. He would have been circumcised when he was 7 accession days or 8 non-accession days old, and that falls on the 13th day, the 3rd day of Tabernacles, which would have been the 17th day of Tishri. And of course, that also has implication. It would have been October 8th in the Gregorian calendar. And it's interesting because if we look at Numbers 29, and we'll look at verses 12 to 40, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but and on the 15th day of the 7th month, ye shall have an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work, and keep the feast of Jehovah 7 days. And ye shall offer a burnt offering, a sacrifice made by fire of a sweet savor unto Jehovah, 13 young bullocks, 2 rams, and 14 lambs of the first year. They shall be without blemish. And their meat offering shall be of flour mingled with oil, 3/10 deals unto every bullock of 13 bullocks, 2/10 deals to each ram of the 2 rams, and a several tenth deal to each lamb of the 14 lambs, and 1 kid of the goats for a sin offering, beside the continual burnt offering, his meat offering, and his drink offering. And it goes on in verse 17. And on the second day, ye shall offer 12 young bullocks, 2 rams, 14 lambs of the first year without spot, and their meat offering and their drink offerings for the bullocks, for the rams, and for the lambs shall be according to the number after the manner. And it goes on. And I outlined in here how many animals are sacrificed each day. And the number of rams remains the same for these 7 days. The number of lambs remains the same in these 7 days. And the number of bullocks goes down every day. So it starts with 13, and then it goes to 12, and it goes to 11 and 10, and down to 7. And then here on the Sabbath day, it's just 1 bullock, 1 ram, and 1 lamb. And so we just read how there were 13, and that's in verse 16. And it goes down to down to 7, and we read about that in verse 32. So I'll go back and read verse 32. And on the seventh day, 7 bullocks, 2 rams, and 14 lambs of the first year without blemish. And then on the 8th day, which would be the 22nd day of Tabernacles, which historically in the year Christ would have born would have been October 13th. Then it was just 1 bullock, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. And you can read about that in verse 35. On the 8th day, ye shall have a solemn assembly. Ye shall do no work, no servile work therein, but ye shall offer a burnt offering, a sacrifice made by fire of a sweet savor unto Jehovah, 1 bullock, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year without blemish. And so I find it interesting, and again, I just have the numbers here. You can verify these for yourself. But I find it interesting on the 12th calendar day after Christ's birth, that would be the seventh day of Tabernacles, and the 12th actual day, or the 12th accession day, that would be when it goes down to 1 bullock, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. And also in these verses here, it also says 1 kid of the goats. So I did a cumulative of all the bullocks. So here on the first day, there's 13, and then the second day it's 12, which adds up to 25. And on the third day, it's 11, and that's interesting because 11 is typically associated with the first coming of Christ, and this would have been the day he was circumcised. And that adds up to 36, and 36 is 6 squared, works doubled. Now, of course, these would be good works because they're Christ's works. And then I go through each of them, and there's 70 total for the first 7 days. And then if you include that 8th day, it's 71. I also here have the number of total animals. So here you have 13 bullocks, 2 rams, 14 lambs, and a kid of the goats. And that adds up to 30. And then the rams, the lambs, and the kids of goats all remain the same. But then the bullocks goes down 1 each day till you get to 7. So here you have 30, 29, 28. And then this is the cumulative 30, and then 29 more is 59, and 28 more is 37. And I have the breakdown of here that's wrong. I don't know why that's there. But 59 is a prime number. 87 is 3 times 29. That was the day that Christ was circumcised. And then this would be the 12th non-accession day, and that's 189, which is 3 cubed times 7. Or if you wanted to go the 12th accession day or 12th actual day after his birth, it's 199. And that's a prime number. And I just thought that was very interesting. And I think it's very interesting here, looking at the day he was circumcised, and proving that he was circumcised on this day. We know in Leviticus chapter 12, we read in verses 1 to 4, and Jehovah, this is Leviticus 12, 1 to 4, and Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman have conceived seed and born a man child, she shall be unclean 7 days according to the separation for her infirmity, she shall be unclean. And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 30 and 3 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying are fulfilled. And so we can see that, and again in Luke 21, verse 39, and when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And this would have been the 17th day of the second month, 17th day of the 7th month. And it would have been his 7th accession or actual day after his birth, or the 8th non-accession or inclusive or calendar day after his birth. And it's interesting, the total number of animals sacrificed that day were 28. And if you do the cumulative, it's 87, which breaks down to 3 times 29. And that's also very interesting because if we look at the number of jubilees, we know they entered into the promised land in 1407 BC, which was 9606 EA, and there was a jubilee every 50 years. And so if we start here, we could call it the 0th non-inclusive jubilee, or the first inclusive jubilee. And in Leviticus 25, I'll read verses 9 to 13. Then shalt thou cause the trumpet of the Jubilee to sound in the 10th day of the 7th month. In the day of atonement shall ye make the trumpet sound throughout all your land. And ye shall hallow the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto the inhabitants thereof. It shall be a jubilee unto you, and ye shall return every man unto his possession, and ye shall return every man unto his family. A jubilee shall be that 50th year unto you. Ye shall not sow, neither reap that which groweth of itself, nor gather the grapes of thy vine undressed. For it is the jubilee. It shall be holy unto you. Ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. And in the year of this jubilee ye shall return every man unto his possession. And historically, they crossed the Jordan River on the 10th day of the 1st month. And to prove that, we would look at Joshua 4:19. Joshua 4:19. And the people came up out of Jordan on the 10th day of the 1st month, and encamped in Gilgal in the east border of Jericho. So they came out of the Jordan River in the 1st month, but the Jubilee is in the 7th month, and that's when people return to their land. And we do know that there was some time they didn't conquer all of the Israel in one day. They did it little by little. And so perhaps, and I haven't looked into this, but it would have taken some time. So perhaps, the 10th day of the 7th month might have been the first Jubilee, because it would have been 6 months after they crossed the Jordan. And we read in Joshua 23, verses 3 to 5, and ye have seen all that Jehovah your God hath done unto all these nations because of you. For Jehovah your God, he hath fought for you. Behold, I have divided unto you by lot these nations that remain to be an inheritance for your tribes from Jordan with all the nations that I have cut off, even unto the great sea westward. And Jehovah your God, he shall expel them from before you and drive them out from your sight, and ye shall possess the land as Jehovah your God hath promised you. And so I think perhaps we can call this a Jubilee year. And if we do it again, it would be the 0th non-inclusive or the first inclusive Jubilee. And if we go down every 50 years, 1407, 1357, 1307, and again, you have the EA years here. And if you go down to the 28th, so the 28th non-inclusive Jubilee or the 29th inclusive Jubilee, that would be in 7 BC or 11,006 EA. And so I do find it very interesting that when they talk about the sacrificing of the animals in the Feast of Tabernacles, the day that Christ was circumcised, which again would have been the 17th day of the 7th month, and it would have been the 7th/8th day after his birth. And historically, it would have been Saturday, October 8th. And again, you see 28 animals sacrificed that day, and you can read that in Numbers 29, verses 20 and 22. And if you add the cumulative number of animals sacrificed, it's 87, which breaks down to 3 times 29. And again, if you go to his 12th calendar day after his birth, this would be the 7th day. And if you go to the 12th actual day after his birth, this would be where it goes down from 7 to 1. And I don't know all the spiritual significance, but I did think it was interesting. And then we also read that 7 days she would be purified. Let me, and I'm going down here 40 days. So here I have this bright line here because the 7th month of Tishri has 30 days in it. And the 30th day would have been Friday, October 1st of 7 BC. And again, if you want to verify this, I'm not asking you to trust me because I'm a man with feet of clay. So Friday, October 21st of 7 BC, that converts to the 30th day of the 7th month. And if I make this a 22, now we can see we're in the 8th month, first day of the 8th month. And yeah. And we do read again, Leviticus chapter 12, verses 1 to 4. And Jehovah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a woman have conceived seed and born a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 days, according to the separation for infirmity she shall be unclean. And in the 8th day, in the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised, and she shall continue in the blood of purifying 30 days. She shall touch no hallowed thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. And again, if we go to Luke chapter 2, and we'll start in verse 21. And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcising of the child, his name was called Jesus, which was so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days of her purification, according to the law of Moses, were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. For it is written in the law of the Lord, every male that openeth the womb shall be called holy to the Lord, to offer a sacrifice according to that which is said in the law of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. And it goes on, and I'm not going to read it all because I read it before, but this is the day he was presented in the temple. And again, I just go, so each day I just add a day. And so this line is here because there's 30 days in the 7th month, and this would have been 20 actual days after Christ's birth, 20 calendar days after his birth. And then if you continue to go down, and again, with the Gregorian dates, I'm just adding a day each time. And so this is the 40th calendar day after his birth. So this would have been the last day of Mary's purification. And then 40 actual days after his birth, that's the day he would have been presented. And this would have been the 20th day of the 8th month, which would have corresponded to Thursday, November 10th. And again, I don't want you to trust me. So if you go here, so this is the 8th month. And if we hit 20, again, you'll see this is Thursday, November 10th of 7 BC, which is exactly here. It's the 20th day of the 8th month, 1110, November 10th. And this would be 40 actual days after his birth. And I just wanted to go through that. Now, in terms of when Christ was 12, again, Luke, I'll read it big. Luke chapter 2, verses 40 to 52. Luke chapter 2, verses 40 to 52. And the child grew and waxed strong in spirit, filled with the wisdom, and grace of God was upon him. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. So he was born around the Feast of Tabernacles, but when he's 12 years old, we're talking about the Feast of the Passover. And when they had fulfilled the days, as they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph his mother knew not of it. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among their kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. And it came to pass, after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking questions. And all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou dealt with us, thus dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my father's business? And when they understood not the saying which he spake unto them, he went down and came with them, and came to Nazareth, and was subject unto them. But his mother kept all these sayings in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and man. So looking at the Feast of the Passover, Nisan is the first month of the biblical calendar. It's also called Abib or Abib. And so again, we go, I'm going from the first day to the 24th day. And historically, in the year 7 AD, this would have been Tuesday, March 6th of 7 AD. And we know that the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Passover, if we go Leviticus 23, I'll read verses 4 to 8. Again, Leviticus 23, 4 to 8. These are the feasts of Jehovah, even holy convocations, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the month at even is Jehovah's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Jehovah. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein.
Hey, Brian, can you hear me?
You haven't heard from Steven at all, have you, Rob?
It looks like Brian, his connection went out. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna end the timeline series because it is time, and we'll go to the panel.